Breaking news from MSNBC reporting that Donald Trump is echoing Hitler during his rallies. Now we're going to jump right into this.
Back when he was in office, Donald Trump saying the quiet parts out loud often meant speaking in code, using dog whistles, telling the Proud Boys, for instance, to stand back and stand by, or saying there are good people on both sides after white supremacists marched through the streets of Charlottesville chanting, "Jews will not replace us." But now? Well, now Donald Trump has dispensed with the dog whistles. He's just going for it.
The next part was just Trump talking fondly about dictators. I'm going to skip that part because this isn't what we're here for.
Make no mistake, when Donald Trump uses his platform to give a big bear hug to the most ruthless dictators of the 21st century, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, Viktor Orban, it's no accident. He knows what he's doing. He didn't just name-check the world's current cast of authoritarians and villains. No, he also nodded to the most notorious, bloodthirsty, depraved fascist of all time, Adolf Hitler.
We got a lot of work to do. You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country. When they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country.
They're poisoning the blood of our country.
Hold on a second. Did I miss it? Wait, that was it? I don't get it. What was it? The blood and the poison thing? What did Hitler say? Something about the Jews being the poison of the blood of the Aryan race or something?
He's referencing undocumented immigrants. Poisoning the blood of our country. It's an important turn of phrase that is sounding alarm bells for civil rights and extremist experts for a reason. In Hitler's manifesto, Mein Kampf, there are several passages in which Hitler used the words poison and blood in conjunction in attacking people that he deemed a threat to the purity of the Aryan race. He was mostly talking about Jews at the time.
I mean, never mind. I'm going to let him finish.
Claiming that, quote, great civilizations of the past died out as a result of contamination of the blood, and linking the, quote, poison which has invaded the national body to an influx of foreign blood.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to stop you right there. This has got to be the weakest argument I ever heard. Like, for example, if someone this guy agreed with, like Joe Biden, said something like, racism is poisoning the blood of our country, I highly doubt that this person would compare that to Hitler. I'm not saying that I agree with what Trump is saying, but you can literally apply that to anything you disagree with, and you wouldn't consider that Hitler. I would understand if he said something like the Mexicans are the poison to the blood of the country, but he didn't even say something like that. So we're just gonna stop that right here.
As the New York Times has reported, Donald Trump has long had a Hitler fascination. His bedside table once held a copy of Hitler's speeches, a gift from a friend, which Ivana Trump, his first wife, said she had seen him occasionally leafing through. During a trip to France in 2018, Mr. Trump reportedly told his chief of staff, John Kelly, well, Hitler did a lot of good things. He also reportedly complained to Mr. Kelly that American generals weren't as loyal as Hitler's generals, asking Kelly, quote, why can't you be like the German generals of the Third Reich?
Now, before we continue, I'm not even going to sit here and pretend that he didn't say something like that, because he probably definitely did. But the thing you need to know about Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, despite the fact that he was the president, Donald Trump is a propagandist. So he'll basically say anything that'll bring any attention to him whatsoever. Ali Velshi is also a propagandist. I mean, just look how he started out this segment.
Now, as a rule, we don't air video of Donald Trump lightly on this show, but we thought it was important that you hear this, that we all bear witness to what the ex-president and current leading Republican candidate is saying here.
In addition to Donald Trump portraying himself as a moderate, ludicrously, and pointing to exceptions.
The last video I did on MSNBC had nothing to do with Trump, and you literally mentioned him there. And based on that, I would assume that you think there's no such thing as bad publicity, so talking about him at all would be good for him. So any publicity is good publicity. So why are you still talking about him?
Now, echoing Hitler's talking points, praising fascist leaders, none of this is subtle, and none of it's a joke. It's all straight out of the dictator's playbook, and it dovetails with what he's already told us that he would do in a second term, including, quote, radically reshaping the federal government by purging potentially thousands of civil servants and filling career posts with loyalists.
I don't even necessarily know what this means, but what I do know is that I'm probably not going to actually hear Donald Trump say anything that echoes Hitler. We're going to move ahead because he's just listing off dumb things that Trump said.
And what he plans to do if he's reelected in 2024. And that's where we start this hour with former United States Senator and co-host of MSNBC's How to Win 2024 podcast, Claire Castle, Protect Democracy co-founder and executive director Ian Bass, plus with me at the table, the former congressman from Florida, David Jolly, and Princeton University professor and distinguished political scholar Eddie Glaude. Lucky for us, all are MSNBC political analysts, and welcome to you all. Ian Bass, let me just start with you, because there are folks, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, there are folks who would say nothing much has really changed with Donald Trump. He is an extremist. He's been this way for a long time. What's the difference now that he's using words that Hitler used? We're not even 100% sure that he's doing it deliberately.
Oh, no, you're not just going to back out. You said that he's literally echoing Hitler. Now, all of a sudden, he might not be doing it deliberately. Like, get out of here, dude.
None of this is subtle, and none of it's a joke. Well, now Donald Trump has dispensed with the dog whistles. He's just going for it.
Like, was it unintentional or was it direct? I think Hitler right here was pretty direct with his intentions. So if you're saying he's echoing Hitler, he would be pretty blatant with his intentions.
What is the difference now?
Well, I think there are a couple of differences, Ali. One is when he did this during his first term and started introducing concepts that were wholly foreign to the American experiment of self-government for the last 247 years. First off, he didn't really have the apparatus to fully implement them. He had people in government who were brought in from prior Republican administrations who, in many cases, did enable some of his bad acts, but in other cases, supremacists stood athwart of them.
Well, here he goes saying things like bad acts. Why not be a little bit more specific? Well, let's look at it like a mathematical equation. Bad acts can equal your interpretation, as opposed to something specific can only be greater than or equal to bad acts. Something they both have in common is they both use your interpretation as part of the process. Both equations could result in the viewer considering these things bad acts. But only one of these equations can guarantee that they see it as bad acts. Take the equation bad acts equals your interpretation and flip it to your interpretation needs to equal bad acts. Something specific might not lead to you thinking it's bad acts because of your interpretation. Something specific might not equal bad acts and might equal heroic acts, making that the final outcome, which he obviously doesn't want to happen. Because then your interpretation would not equal the narrative they're trying to push. Your interpretation plus bad acts equals the narrative, which he would be okay with. Your interpretation plus something specific plus bad acts might not equal the narrative, but it would be honest, allowing the opinion to be promoted but also leaving it more up to the viewer's interpretation. Your interpretation plus bad acts might equal the narrative, but would be dishonest and only be promoted under the context of a vague list of bad acts that are presented to be bad to the viewer with little to no specification to avoid the viewer from having an actual opinion. So if he's 100% sure that these are bad acts, then he wouldn't mind using a more honest approach. This would be fine with him. So why isn't he going about it this way? Well, that's because he's a propagandist.
And this time he now has an entire apparatus outside of government that is preparing to fill the government ranks with loyalists who would simply carry out his wishes and are ideologically aligned to this dictator-type agenda.
All right, that's enough out of him. Let's see what someone else has to say about this.
Eddie, I see you nodding your head here.
Yeah, I mean, there is a sense the first time around he's a rookie. Now he's a seasoned actor, and he's mobilizing all of those forces and resources across the country in order to, in some ways, execute what is obviously and seriously an anti-democratic project. I want to say that it's not wholly foreign to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Nazi lawyers in the 1930s are actually looking to American law, anti-miscegenation law, immigration law, as examples. Mein Kampf actually quotes the American project as an exemplary project. Remember, in 1939, in Madison Square Garden, there's an extraordinary Nazi rally.
So what he's talking about is Hitler's inspiration. It was actually Andrew Jackson's conquest with the Native Americans, but we'll get on that in another video. But quite literally, Congress didn't pass this. The American government wasn't okay with Andrew Jackson doing this, so what he's saying is literally irrelevant. If you want me to do a separate video dissecting these political analysts, just leave a comment saying citation needed, and maybe I'll get to it. But now I'm going to answer this question. Why do white supremacists endorse Donald Trump?
Donald Trump says a lot of crazy stuff.
So that being one of the reasons, but pretty much propaganda like this is one of the main ones in my opinion. White supremacists in this propaganda equals bad acts. White supremacists don't consider white supremacists to be bad acts. White supremacists equals heroic acts to them. Donald Trump equals white supremacists. Donald Trump equals hero to them. Only the left-wing propaganda suggests that he is comparable to Hitler. You don't see any other outlets saying this. Fox News is too worried about
Target Santa is in a wheelchair and is black.
So yeah, it's pretty much the left-wing propaganda that's promoting this to these white supremacists. My final conclusion is that this particular narrative of left-wing propaganda is most likely the reason why white supremacists endorse Donald Trump. This reason being the fact that there are no right-wing media outlets suggesting that he's a white supremacist. If anything, they argue that he isn't. So if MSNBC can convince the average person who is watching them that Donald Trump is a white supremacist, then if a white supremacist is convinced that Trump is one as well, then they are going to endorse him despite it being bad publicity. Because let's remember what we talked about before, that there is no such thing as bad publicity. So is Donald Trump a white supremacist? Well, based on that video, I'd say not. If that's the strongest argument you got, then I'd say no. Now, is he a propagandist? Absolutely. Could he be a white supremacist? Like I said, if that's the best argument, probably not. But he definitely is a propagandist, and it's definitely dangerous, and you should definitely look out. That's all I have for this video. Like and comment if you want more.